Hi there. This is Dr. Nancy Dome, and I wanted to take a moment to thank everybody who submitted questions for me to, or scenarios, I should say, for me to work through using the protocol from my newsletter. I have a couple scenarios that I want to share and then just talk really quickly about how the protocol would apply. So the first scenario says, there's a coworker on my team who I can't stand to be around because they're constantly undermining me. When I bring an idea to the table, they'll immediately say they want to play the devil's advocate. It ends up being pretty unhealthy, and it's exhausting to be in conflict with this person all the time. But we still have to work together every day. There's no way around it. What can I do? This is not an unusual scenario. It's amazing how people can trigger us. And I think a lot of it has to do with personality and with communication styles. So depending on how we communicate, and really depends on how we receive others who communicate differently. So for instance, I'm a personal intuitive communicator, and I get triggered sometimes by analytical and functional communicators, not because there's something wrong with them, but just because I'm so deeply in touch with how I feel about things that when people want lists or want to lead with data and not talk about impact and feelings, I have a really hard time connecting. And so my work has been to really figure out how to ride my own emotional wave, ask for what I need, and try to figure out how to meet somewhere in the middle, right? Because I think that every communication style is important. So that's the first thing I will say is think about, how do you communicate, and could it be that the person that's triggering you has a different communication style? So now let's lay the protocol over that. So the RIR, recognize, interrupt, and repair, which is the protocol under the compassionate dialogue framework, will say that the recognize, the first R, is really going to ask us to slow down and really get in touch with what we're feeling. Because if we don't do that, we will be in reaction mode. And that's when the stress conflict reactions show up. So for me, my stress conflict reaction is fight. And so if I'm triggered by someone and I feel like I'm being gaslit, or I feel like I'm, just kind of being undermined, then without me mitigating my own feelings, it's not likely that I'm going to show up in a productive way. And so this idea that we recognize our feelings, we slow down, we figure out what's happening in my body. We ask some questions like, is this true? Is this person really trying to undermine me? Just getting to a place where we can kind of push our emotions down a little bit and get to curiosity, because it's through curiosity that I can actually begin to engage in a meaningful way. And so that gets me to the I, the interrupt, and so what I say that in those situations like that, what is it that you want to know? Because the interrupt, while it sounds like we're just going in and we're going to tell you what's wrong, that's actually not what interrupt is about. Interrupt is about inquiry. It's about curiosity. It's about, how do I engage with you from a place of curiosity and empathy? And so if I feel like I'm being undermined by somebody that I work with, my interrupt would be, for me, a very specific question, but it could also be sharing an impact. An example would be, when you say you're playing devil's advocate, it actually triggers me. And so I would love to figure out a way for us to both get our needs met without, that language. And so asking for what you need is the first step. And I think that we've been so conditioned to not to do that, we're afraid of offending somebody, or we're afraid we're going to say the wrong thing, or, there's a number of things that get in the way of us being able to do that. But when we can do that, we actually get a lot further in that interaction. So the interrupt could be literally a question, or a perspective, sharing a perspective or sharing an impact. And then once we do that, the repair The second R is really about setting boundaries. So, we have this conversation. So I just shared with you that it impacts me when you do that. Maybe another question at the interrupt could be that I'm trying to understand what your end game is. Like, is it really about pushing, our agenda and pushing me to stretch? Because, that's different. If you are really trying to do it to help me, then we can figure out how to do it together. And sometimes it's not about anything like that. Sometimes it's literally about, I just want to annoy you. I mean, there are people that we work with who do that for whatever reason. But it's important to ascertain which one that person is. So that person is really there seriously to kind of push your thinking and push the thinking of the organization. Then you can get to a place in repair where you can figure out how to do this together, right? If that person really is pushing you just to, annoy you, then you'll know that too. And if that's if that's the truth, then the repair is different. So with the first one, if the person is really pushing you for the betterment, even though the way they're doing it is problematic for you, the repair can look like setting boundaries that you create together, right? That collaboration around, well, it doesn't work for me when you say that. So can we find another way to do that together that doesn't, say you're playing the devil's advocate, and you can actually co-create a strategy for that repair so that when that happens, you're able to kind of stop it in the moment and ask for what you need and then work together. If it's the latter, where the person really is just trying to get under your skin, then you know that, again, it's setting boundaries and also setting guardrails, but your repair would be different, which would be, one, it could, with that person who is really just trying to undermine you, it really is about being very clear about your intentions and what you will and will not accept. And so sometimes that repair looks like, what, I'm going to wait and come back to this when you're able to talk to me in a way that's more respectful, right? So what boundaries can you set for yourself that actually let someone know what you need, and then be consistent around that, right? Don't change depending on the situation, because when you do that, you're actually not you're not supporting ongoing change for that. I can't make you do something you don't want to do, but I can tell you what I will accept in the interaction, and that's the important piece. This is not about changing someone else's behavior. It's about setting boundaries for yourself so that you can engage. Okay, so that is a quick and dirty on that scenario, and I hope it helps, because you're not alone on that. I think people run into those issues regularly in the workplace. But I will say that I think the majority of the time, it really is a difference in how we communicate and less about someone being out to get you. But it's important to know the difference. And if someone is out to get you, it's important to know that too.